Be sure to check out MythVisionPodcast.com. Help MythVision grow, guys. Become a Patreon member. You guys will get early access to all my videos when I'm done editing them. Also, it's a small community where you guys can message me your questions and talk to me in private. You guys can also donate through PayPal and Cash App. Join the social media links down in the description. We have Twitter, Facebook, all sorts of social media. Help the community of MythVision grow. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell so you guys are notified every time I do a live video and you don't miss any of my content. We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. Your host, Derek Lambert. Today I have Fifth with us, if you will. I'm going to call him that through the entire interview. His real name's Cliff Henderson. He was on the Leah Remini show, the Scientology and the Aftermath. He was on there with a lot of other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. The show takes us through Scientology, and you go into the crazy stuff that they believed and the things they do to keep their members from escaping the cult. And that's what I'm actually interested in starting to show you guys on MythVision more. I want to reveal some of the issues with these cults and why religion can be harmful, why these ideologies can really destroy households, families, and people's own lives. And so toward the end of the show, I was like, okay, this is all Scientology. And then boom, what just happened? The Kingdom Hall. What are you talking about? 144,000. I started hearing numbers. I said, okay, hold on. This took a turn, but it was the craziest turn. It wasn't a turn like you would think where it was completely different. It like almost closely compared Scientology and Jehovah's Witness cult in a similar fashion. And my heart went out to the guys who expressed, and you were one of them. So welcome to the show, Fifth. I appreciate you joining me, bro.
Thank you for having me, Derek, man. It's really a pleasure for me to be on with you.
Yeah, man. I know that right these days, it's not like you're not like doing it like you were, proactivism all the time talking about this because you're moving on in life. However, there's a lot of people who are still stuck that might need to hear this message today. And I really want some of them that might be sitting on the fence to consider from your heart. Like, I want this to be real. I want you to just tell the truth straight up, what you felt, what happened, what it's like. And that's all you can do, man. And maybe you can help some people just like yourself, because I can tell you're a good guy, man. And your parents still don't talk to you till this day. Right. And that's a tough thing for anyone. So with that being said, bro, I figure why not just start with this? I want to give a shout out to my boy. First things first, he introduced me to you, and he is an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He himself, his father, literally 48 years, is recently having to deal with leaving the cult, completely leaving this cult. And I honestly can't tell you how painful that must be, really, honestly. David Samuel, I appreciate everything, man, and helping me get hooked up with Cliff and taking an interest in the Jehovah's Witnesses altogether, because Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm going to say this now, 99.9% of them are good people. And for anyone watching that are just bashers of religion and an anti-theist, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. You're a skeptic. I'm a skeptic. But these are people, and they really think they're thinking the right way. They mean well. We're all trying to know the truth. We're all trying to figure out what the truth is. We really are. And they think they have it. But cognitive dissonance and manipulation and some of the tools that have been known for a long time by humans who've developed ways of controlling people by using ideologies and such, and God of the gaps, explaining what we don't understand. And here, I've got the package, and it sounds good. It feels good. And that's all they're doing. So we want to try and unravel the package without destroying it, because most of them are run and hide and not even listening to this message today. We want this to be a message of love, and we want it to be of truth. And so with that being said, I'm done preaching, Cliff. I'm sorry I called you by your first name. Your name's over here in the video. But Fifth, I appreciate it, man. And so my boy David's dad's leaving the cult. And I figure, why not start off with a few things? You have a YouTube channel, 2 YouTube channels, one about music, and the other one is actually called ExJW Fifth, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. That's it.
What does that mean? What does Fifth mean? You go by the name Fifth. What's that mean?
Yeah, so that's funny. There's actually a lot of misconceptions about why I'm called that. But it's actually pretty simple. So Fifth is actually my suffix. Like, you have junior, third. So believe it or not, I'm literally, like, my name, as you said, Cliff Henderson. I'm literally Cliff the Fifth. My dad is the 4th. His dad was the 3rd, So Fifth has actually been my nickname since I was a teenager. That's just, something people called me, my friends, and even sometimes within my family. So, when I started my YouTube channel, whether it was for the music or for the activism, I just went by what my nickname was. I kind of wanted to bring people in on a more personal level, since that's what, people that were close to me would actually call me.
So it has nothing to do with being like a fifth generation Jehovah's Witness?
No,
Okay.
no, I've heard people surmise that, but so I'm actually, if you're asking about the generations, I would be considered a third generation Jehovah's Witness. My grandparents on either side were or are Jehovah's Witnesses. So yeah, I'm third generation.
That's interesting. Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind, honestly.
Yeah.
They're very biblical minded people, inerrant, infallible, every word, every jot and tittle. I saw recently in the court, they're dealing with legality stuff down in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. But I did see a video where the courts were asking, so you're telling me, and this is actually, I think, was mentioned on the Leah Remini show, where they said, you are telling me you have to have more than one witness to investigate a crime or investigate a child molestation or something like that. And they were like, when two or more are gathered, like 2 or 3 witnesses, we go by the law of God and in the Bible. And there's a lot of that stuff going on. So I want to mention they're that literal. They're that strict about the Bible. And that's when you start to run into these problems, I think. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah. And one way of looking at it is they're very strict on the Bible, but even as was kind of shown in that court case in Australia, it's still very selective, right? I mean, there's still certain things that, like, for example, this is not something that I usually think of, but this is just something that came to my mind right now. For the most part, you won't see Jehovah's Witnesses with beards. I don't know if anybody has ever noticed that, but it's very rare. And I'm only giving the caveat that it's possible because there may be some countries where it's a little bit more acceptable, or there may be people who are not actually active Jehovah's Witnesses that subscribe to the beliefs that grow a beard, but they don't, they probably don't go to the meetings and go to the religious services, because that's just a thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't have beards. In the Bible, if you look at, the what's considered the Old Testament, you'll see a lot of things about it being shameful for a man to shave his beard. There's different things like that to where it's definitely selective. The way that they will express it is that they follow everything to the T, but you would definitely find things that they're able to kind of explain away and say, well, not this because of this and that,
Yeah, that's every cult does that too. Do they do that with like with Kosher Diet? Like what do they eat? Is there something they don't eat?
No, the diet is the same. The only thing, and this is like, as a Jehovah's Witness, I never encountered something that like I wasn't supposed to eat. Actually, it happened one time, but this is so rare. So I was in Argentina at one point, just traveling as a Jehovah's Witness, and they had something, and I'm not going to say the name because I forget, and it's been a while, but they had like a blood sausage. And blood, if people know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, they know that transfusions are off limits. You can't get a blood transfusion, even if it's, to save your life. But you also can't eat blood, right? So something like that. And again, that's kind of like, that's not going to really come up in the average Jehovah's Witnesses life and be like, oh, is that a blood sausage? Like, it's very rare, So, wow. Yeah, but there's no dietary restrictions for the most part with Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, all right, I want to take us into baptism here real quick. And I'm going to try and give the quotations to kind of specify this is lingo that is specifically Jehovah's Witnesses have meaning to these terms. And you can maybe spell out some of the stuff. So born into the religion, baptized at 11, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Perhaps let me ask you like this. What's the difference between baptized at 11 or being christened as a baby in the Catholic Church, et cetera, at age 11? You are still a baby mentally, yet the Jehovah's Witnesses make you sign a lifelong contract, kind of like the Sea Org members do 1 billion years or whatever. Here you have a lifelong contract at such a young age, which has severe ramifications as an adult. And from my understanding, you get baptized in the Father, the Son, and the Spirit-directed organization. Is that what they say?
Right. So I'm gonna correct a couple of minor things. So I was baptized when I was 9, number one, and there's not an actual contract. I in my music video called "Cost of Doing Business," later when I started doing music, I used a contract to represent what baptism actually means for a Jehovah's Witness. So when you compare it to, I think you said the Catholic Church or other, religions, as far as I know, oftentimes they will get baptized as a baby or different things like that. But because of what you just said, when you said Father, Son, and the Spirit directed organization, you're linking yourself, you're marrying yourself to an organization. So if at any point you ever renege or you, as they would say it, basically you go back on that dedication that you made, even if you make it as a child, you're liable for to experiences you will experience the consequences that come with breaking that contract, so to speak, right? And again, it's just the baptism, but what it represents is a contract, and it represents that you will be a Jehovah's Witness and you will follow Jehovah's Witnesses teachings, that you will never question the leadership, that you will never, do things that are against their, in many cases, peculiar interpretations of the Bible. And, if you ever do commit any of those transgressions, there is a procedure, there's like a court that, that you kind of go through. Mm-hmm. And, maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But yes, so basically at whatever, there are people who get baptized. My mother got baptized at 7, and that's not very common. I would say for most people that are raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, I would say the average is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 and 15, which is still really young, right? You can't really you don't qualify to do anything else in life in a lot of countries between those ages, right? So, the age that I got baptized and some of my siblings and my mother is even younger, but it's allowed. I've heard people get baptized as young as 5. And the idea is, again, you think about what you're thinking at age 9, your parents could come and say anything to you. And you're like, okay, that's what we're doing, and that's basically how it went for me. I was 9. All I knew was this. It wasn't like, is this the truth or is this the true religion? Or should I, question this like that? Those thoughts don't even for the average 9-year-old or even 12-year-old or maybe even 15-year-old, those thoughts don't really cross your mind, right? Because that's just what you're used to.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's a lifelong allegiance to an organization. So I want to ask you real quick, and we can move to another topic here. Did they literally baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit directed organization? Is that what they say?
Yeah. So sometimes the language changes on the specific questions. I know the questions have changed like over the years, but I believe that is the wording of it now.
Wow.
And I think that's been the wording of it for a while. It's changed at some point, but yes, that's the wording. And basically, there's also another follow-up question, if I remember correctly. Again, it's going back a while, but if I remember correctly, they also say, do you understand that your baptism identifies you as one of Jehovah's Witnesses? So in either case, they make sure that it's stated that this baptism is directly related to the Jehovah's Witness organization. Mm-hmm. They make that pretty clear. So they give like a talk, they give like a speech, and then, they ask everybody who has gone through questions. You go through questions with elders on 3 different occasions, 3 different elders. And, that may take several weeks. And then at the end, the 3 elders confer and they decide if you basically passed or if you didn't pass. And if they decide that you pass at the next big meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses, you're one of the people that stands up and, and has to answer those questions. Do you understand this? Do you understand that? There's 2 questions, and then you get baptized.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty weird. They didn't just say Holy Spirit. They make it an organization, which sounds like Scientology, very cult-like. So you're not attacking a entity, so to speak, or something, being, spirit. No, you're attacking a physical organization, which makes it more I think the cults really use that. Scientology does
Right.
similar stuff. So you've been out for a few years. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit of your deconversion story, or how you came to leave the organization. Let me phrase it like this. I also deconstructed. I like to call it deconstructed, deconverted, whatever you want to call it. There were things I can look back and pull out what happened when I was thinking this way, and these things are what came into my path of thinking that caused me to start questioning and considering new evidence for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, in such a cult, and let me say this up front, because I have my notes, but it's kind of later that you worked in Bethel. Okay. This is, if you're a Jehovah's Witness or ever were a Jehovah's Witness, you know, this is the legit hierarchy of the organization, the very thing you're baptized into. You worked there. And so I want to say, like, you were up there, and then what happened? What happened in your heart, in your mind? What caused you to change and leave?
So I always struggle to tell an abbreviated version of this story, because as you can probably attest to, you know, I don't know the details of your story in particular, but I think most of the time it's usually a series of things, right? It's usually an accumulation of, like, okay, this happened, and I was like, okay, that's weird, but I'm going to just kind of keep going. And then something else happens, and, you know, and then eventually it gets to a point where you're almost forced to deal with it, right? And you kind of keep pushing it off until you have to. So basically what happened with me is, you know, at different points in my life, I was presented with different things. One time I was out, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are known for, like, knocking on doors, or like trying to convert people at train stations or whatever, you know, out in public. So I remember, you know, when I was 17, I came across somebody who, you know, I was out doing that, and he kind of told me some things about the founder of the religion that I didn't know. And, you know, he was bringing up some prophecies, some failed prophecies that I had never heard of, because that's the thing with a lot of groups similar to Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, you may not know about some of the skeletons in the religion's closet from just a decade or 2 decades before, right? Because even my parents, for example, would just never talk about it. They've been in it for whatever, but it's just, you know, hey, we're past that. God is enlightening us, blah, blah. So people don't talk about some of those things, right? So anyway, there was a situation where, you know, I came to learn about the year 1975, where the organization all but explicitly predicted that Armageddon would come, right? They have plausible deniability to a degree where they say, well, we didn't exactly, but you basically said it. You know, it's like people were selling their homes and people were doing all kind of stuff, because it basically was conveyed that that was going to happen. So, you know, obviously I didn't know about that. I was born in the 80s, so I didn't hear about that. So anyway, when I was 17, I came across this guy doing the door knocking thing. He mentioned that, you know, so whatever, I kind of asked my dad about it, and whatever, just kind of pushed it out of my mind. Right. So then years later, other little things would happen. You know, I had some friends that were close to me that were just as committed to me or committed to the religion as I was. And, you know, out of nowhere, even some of them who also worked at the headquarters that I did, they said, you know, basically, I've come to realize that this isn't true, and just different things that would happen that would kind of, you know, they would kind of, how do I say this? They would just give me at least a reason to have to consider the possibility that this is not the absolute truth, right? Because prior to that, it's not even something that goes through your mind, right? This is the truth, because this is all I know.
Right.
All of my family is in this. All of my friends are in this. I've obeyed the rules and haven't established relationships of any kind with people outside of this. So it's not really an option for me to consider that something is wrong with this, right? But there were things that were kind of forcing me to at least have to think about it. And then, you know, you read the Jehovah's Witness publications, they say, hey, that's Satan trying to trick you and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, eventually there was some of those things happening. I still have, you know, kind of a high position in the religion. And eventually it basically got to a point where those those doubts, those questions just became so loud in my head that I couldn't really ignore it anymore, but I was still scared to do research because, as with many groups, you know, you're not supposed to do any research outside of their authorized, approved literature. You know, everything that anybody else says against it is a lie and it's Satan and blah, 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 right? So, you know, I didn't do any of that, but eventually, you know, I just got depressed because the cognitive dissonance was going on. I was like, it doesn't make sense, but it has to make sense. It better make sense, you know. I stopped going to the services for a couple of months. And then eventually, and if you have any questions about this later, I know it's kind of a lot. I'm kind of going into a little bit about the process of things, but
it's okay.
I stopped going to the services for a couple of months, just being depressed at my home. And, you know, during that time, I was no longer following all of their rules, right? I wasn't following all of the Jehovah's Witness rules. So, you know, after a couple of months, you know, whatever it is that they kind of put in you kind of started bugging me. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's true. Maybe Satan is tricking me with this depression, blah, blah, blah. So let me go back and let me try to, you know, rekindle my faith or whatever.
You tried.
I tried.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I like this because I tried. And I want to say for anyone watching, if you've never been a person of faith, which a lot of people who see my stuff are never believers even, like we really think we're trying. I don't know with what we can allow and what is acceptable. We're trying with those tools. But as you said, someone comes in with a foreign type of tool and you're like, yo, I'm not supposed to use that. They told me that tool's not supposed to be used. It's not on my list. But for whatever reason, the way they present it and the way they describe it was in just the right way we needed to hear it at that moment, to even just listen to them and plant that seed in the back of our head that said, listen, you might want to look into this. You might want to consider this. And then, I got you. But later on, 10 other tools come in. So I'm sorry, I had to just say that. That's powerful.
No problem. And that's the thing, you know, that's what people, I think it's important that you bring that point up, because it's not like, you know, you go out in a blaze of whatever. You just, you know, this is your whole life, especially in my case, right? This is everything. Everybody's wrapped into this thing. You know, I didn't go to college. I had a 4.0 GPA in high school, and I didn't go to college because they frown on college, right? They want you to pursue these other things. So I made all these sacrifices. So I'm like, no, it's got to be true, right? So I'm still kind of trying to make it work in my head. Eventually, basically, when I decide like, okay, I'm going to go back and try to work it out. What happens is, if you, during that period, you know, since I wasn't following those rules, I ended up committing one of the very long list of transgressions that they have, right, as that you're not supposed to do as a Jehovah's Witness. And because they emphasize that so much, that, hey, if you have any of those transgressions, you know, you have to confess it. In my case, it was being with a woman. And so because I was still kind of had the brainwashing going, and I was trying to like, okay, I want to do everything by the book still, even though I'm not 100% sure. I went and confessed to the elders, which is what you're supposed to do according to the literature. And basically, because of that, they disfellowshipped me, which is like the excommunication or whatever. Even though I was telling them, hey, like, I got into this space because I was having doubts. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what was going on. And that's what, you know, led to this. But now I'm just trying to put my best foot forward. I'm telling on myself, you know, kind of thing. So I ended up getting disfellowshipped, and that cuts you off from your family and from everybody that's within that group, you know.
Let me ask you this real quick, Fifth, because this is important. Yeah. When you tried to go back and you confessed, I've heard that some people who try to make it work, they penalize them or they punish them by letting them attend meetings, but don't speak to anybody, get in, get out, like that kind of stuff. Was it like they just knew with you, they were like, yeah, we're done? I mean, it might depend on the hall, but.
Yeah, so it's a little, this is kind of where the nuances come in. So basically, you know, I don't know how detailed you want me to get into the process, but basically how it works is, when the elders find out, whether it's through your confession or through somebody telling on you, because that's another thing that they encourage within the religion, tell on your fellow member if you know about a transgression, right? So if the elders come to find out about it, they have basically a little trial. And the trial is you know, the accused center, and 3 elders, right? And so what happens is at that point, once it gets to that point, it's not about did you do it or not. It's about, are you sorry enough for us to allow you to continue to have your relationship with other Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And they have this book that you actually don't know about. You don't know about because you're not an elder, right? So like as just a rank and file or anything below an elder, you've never read this book. You don't know anything about this book. It's their secret manual that the elders have. It's online. You can look at it now. But, you know, as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't really know about it. So you tell them whatever. They, amongst themselves, they look at this book and they figure out, if, you know, what the punishment should be. And basically, if they determine that you're sorry enough for this transgression, then they just put some restrictions on you. And like, you know, there's things that you can't do, but you can still have communication and you're not like completely shunned. But if they determine that you haven't met your burden of proof, essentially what it is, it's like a court, right? You have the burden of proof to say, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid. I love Jehovah. I can't believe what I did, you know, blah, 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 whatever. If they're not convinced, and you can say all of those things, but they have to be convinced. It's really up to them, the elders, right? So you could be sitting there crying, you know, you could be sitting there just cut to heart and like scared and blah, blah, blah. But if those elders are not convinced and aren't satisfied, then they're going to say, you're disfellowshipped. And that's how it works, right? So once I came forward and said this, but I'm trying to work on this, blah, blah, I had the 3 elder meeting. I was just confused. You know, I was very honest with them because I was a true believer, even though I was having like my doubts or whatever. I just wasn't sure.
You trusted this organization, though. You trusted confiding in them and saying, I messed up. I know that we have it written. And what they did is disfellowship you, though. They said they didn't believe you. They didn't think you were.
Well, see, and that's the thing. It's basically.
I'm asking you to kind of speak from your mind, your mind, because I can't read their minds. But in your mind, when this is happening to you, you have doubts right now.
Yeah.
You're in there. You had doubts. Were you kind of done? But part of you wanted to make it work, but at the same time, you were confused. You were like, yo, I don't think this is true anymore like it was, but like, it's all I know. So I'm going to try it. And
that's basically it.
They could see that. Right. And they said, Satan.
Yeah. And that's the thing. They have this book that they go by. So it's like, if you say certain things or don't say certain things, you know, when you're excused from the room and they're deliberating, they're looking through this book that you don't know about. And it's like, well, there's this. He checks these boxes, you know, and then also just whatever their opinion is, whatever their feeling is. And so, so that's what they did. So they disfellowshipped me. So when you're disfellowshipped or excommunicated, everybody's supposed to stop talking to you. You know, they make an announcement, and then that announcement kind of reverberates around the entire world by text message and phone. Did you hear about such and such? You know, and then so everybody knows. And so, you know, you don't have communication with anybody who's a Jehovah's Witness. And then what happens is there's a path to reinstatement, right? So it's like, and that's where that comes in, what you were describing, where you still have to go to the meeting. So in order to get reinstated, you basically have to continue to go to all of the religious services. They have to like look at your literature and see that it's underlined and studied and all of that kind of stuff. And if they see that, and you do that for, it could take 6 months, it could take 2 years, it could take 3 years. Like people have sat out for a long time while actively trying to get back in. And it's really just up to their discretion and that book that they have that you don't know about. You know, even once you get this fellowship, you don't know about that book. So, you know, that's why they say it's not forever shunning, right? You have to, if you come back and then like, okay, now I'm not doing the thing that got me excommunicated anymore, and I am now going to be a perfect Jehovah's Witness. I'm going to do everything right. I believe everything that's taught, blah, 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 right? So basically what happened to me is once I got disfellowshipped, and I actually was thinking like, okay, maybe I am going to be just kind of going back, you know, that's when I decided, you know what, this is a unique situation where I'm kind of disconnected from everybody. I'm a person of, for whatever it's worth, I'm a person of integrity. So like, I said, I got to find out one way or the other. Like, I got to decide, is this true? And if it's true, I'll do it. If it's not, this doesn't make sense anymore. Even though I don't know anything, I don't even know what's out there. I don't know anything about anything, but like, I owe it to myself to figure this out because I've been struggling with these questions for so long, right? So I started doing my research, and it doesn't take long. Once you actually, you probably know, like in most of these cases, you start doing any reading, right? The stuff that you're not supposed to look at because they say it's all Satan and blah, blah, blah. The minute you look at it, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, or this is exactly how I felt the whole time. And you start reading it, or you start watching these videos and different things, and you're like, yep, that's it. So it took me a couple of weeks because I was already had that kind of build up. It took me a couple of weeks, and I was like, I can't go back. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea what life is going to look like, but I can't do that anymore because it's not true. It's not true. So that's basically my story.
So what happened when you got disfellowshipped? And let me ask you this one question. Did you ever step back into a hall again and go to since then? Have you ever stepped back into a service after that?
After I got disfellowshipped, yes, because like I said, I wasn't sure. I was going to the meetings for like 2 weeks, and I did experience the disfellowship treatment of somebody who's disfellowshipped and like trying to go back, because you go, everybody kind of puts their head down, nobody looks at you, you kind of walk in, after it starts, and you leave like before it ends so that there's no interaction with you and other people. So I experienced that for a couple of weeks. And I'm going to be honest, I treated people like that, right? Because that's what I was, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and there were people that were disfellowshipped, and they would come and they're all ashamed and blah, blah. And I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing, right? So like, I didn't talk to people, blah, blah. And then they would come back, and it's like, all right, welcome back, after there's 6 months or 2 years or whatever it was. And it took me a couple of weeks, and I said, something's off. Something's really, really wrong with this. And I'm starting to really feel something is off. So anyway, I did go for a couple of weeks, and then it got to a point where I couldn't stomach it anymore. It was like, this doesn't feel authentic for some reason, and then I did my research, and that was it.
What about mom and dad? What happened after this?
Yeah. So
how did they take it? And then, I don't know, this is getting into personal, but
no, it's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder, man, because my mom asks me to pray all the time when I bump into her, because she knows. She even tells me that, Derek, now you can have your own beliefs. I don't even know what you believe, if you do believe, and I'm a skeptic, right? So I'm actually, by definition, an atheist, even though I'm not like a hater of anybody who believes. Like, I just personally, I don't think there's sufficient evidence for me to actually believe a God or a specific type of deity or whatever. Hey, is pantheism true? Maybe, but I think there may be a natural explanation for the things that we see around us in the world that we live in, even though I don't have all the answers. And so anyway, my mom will ask me to pray. She knows I've been excommunicated from the Presbyterian Church, and I went into heresy big time. And then, I'm like you in many ways. We could definitely share a show on that. But my mom asks me to pray all the time. She still communicates with me. She still loves her son, because her religion allows for her, in her mind, to still do that. But I'll pray right in front of her. Even though I don't believe in it, I do it. And mom goes, thank you. I feel so much better. Like, it just makes her feel better. But your mom and dad's religion doesn't allow that. How did they take it? What did they say to you? What did you say to them before you were never able to talk to them again?
Yeah. So when you're, this whole thing is so strange. Like, especially looking at it from the outside now, it's like, whoa, it's so odd. But basically, when you're disfellowshipped and you think like it's possible you're going to come back, which 90% or a large percentage of people, that's what happens. They're like, oh man, I just messed up and I got to, come back. And this is just part of God's discipline, and it's righteous and whatever. Right. So even though I wasn't for sure what I believed, out of love for my parents, honestly, I was like, hey, I just got a little confused. I watered it down a little. I got a little confused. I'm going to get everything together. I'll be back, because for them, when you get disfellowship, it's like a death almost, right? Because if you know, the idea is if Armageddon comes while you're disfellowshipped, it's probably not looking too good for you, right? You're probably not going to make it. So it's really like there are tears, and it's literally like somebody dying. And in some cases, I think I can say this without hyperbole, without exaggerating, it's worse than somebody dying, because if somebody dies and they're a faithful Jehovah's Witness, well, they're probably going to get resurrected, right? But if you're disfellowshipped, now God hates you, right? Like God literally hates you, and he doesn't want your family talking to you. You know, he'll disapprove of your family if they talk. Like it's this really like very heavy thing. So when I first got disfellowshipped and I was still kind of disoriented, I told my parents like, hey, I love you guys. I'm sorry for the pain, you know, putting you through, you know, I'm just going to keep working and blah, blah, blah. But once I went through that couple of week period where I couldn't go to the services anymore because it was just something was wrong, and then I did my research, I wrote an email to my parents, and to which they didn't respond. But I wrote an email and I said, you know what? I said, I've come to this conclusion. I was like, I still love you guys. I'm not trying to end our relationship. I said, I would love to have a relationship with you guys. I'm not sure what to do. What do we do in this situation when I genuinely from my heart don't believe this? I can fake it, and there are people who do, and there's no knock to those people, by the way, because I don't blame people for playing the game to get their relationship with their family.
Wow.
Absolutely, I don't blame people. There's a lot of people that do that, by the way, and I don't blame them. I just don't really have that in me for whatever that's worth, good, bad, or indifferent. That's just, you know, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I really believed it. Like I really, really believed it. And like, I really followed rules, you know, to it. You know, that's kind of just how I'm built. So, you know, when I got to a point where I was like, I don't more, I said, what can we do? Like, I know what the rules say, but you know, if you guys decide that it's over, then it's really over, because it's not one of those situations where later I'm going to be like, okay, I was just out having fun in the world, and now I'm like, okay, I need your hope. Like I literally have looked at this and it doesn't make sense to me anymore. Like I've analyzed this and it does not make sense, and I can't fake it. I'm not capable of faking it, right? So I told them that, and there was no answer. You know, eventually, now this is where people are going to be like, no, that guy's crazy. But eventually I drove to my parents' house just because I just said, this is crazy. Like, this is insane. I just drove to their house, and I kind of, and they ended up, because I was there and it was an hour away, they ended up having a conversation with me. And I just said, guys, what can we do? I was like, you guys, look in my eyes. Like, I'm being honest. I'm not trying to just be like, man, I just want to go and do this and blah, blah. Like, I'm honestly I can't believe this anymore. It doesn't ring true to me anymore. And in fact, I know it's not true. And it was basically kind of, well, you know, I'm not saying my parents weren't like emotional. They were definitely emotional, especially my mother, but you know, they're good Jehovah's Witnesses. I'll say that. Like Jehovah's Witness theology and leadership makes it very clear where your loyalty is supposed to lie. You know, they give all these examples where they tie in these biblical examples of people who chose Jehovah over their family and Jehovah blessed them. Like it's very, very, very clear. It's not ambiguous at all. When your family, your parents, your children, your brother, your sister decides they're not going to do this anymore, your decision is clear. You go with the organization and you cut them off, and you're prepared for them to die, basically, right? Not cold-heartedly necessarily, but that's what it is. And that's basically where my parents and my siblings, I'm one of 5 children, haven't spoken to my sisters, my brother, nobody, you know. Wow. And that's just how it is.
Fifth. Yeah. It's crazy, bro. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And maybe one day, you know, they'll see the truth. And the truth is, it's not what they've been believing it. Right. You know, this is just amazing hearing you say this, because I've never heard anyone describe that I've actually talked to in person this level. So are you there with us? Did he glitch out? I think he glitched out. You there? Okay, he's on Facebook. There you are.
Hey, yeah, I'm not sure. We're not sure what happened.
No biggie, no biggie. Yeah, I was just saying, it's just crazy, man. The whole thing's just crazy. So let me ask you some of these questions that I have, because you worked in the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses based in New York. This is the head honcho, the Bethel, as Jehovah's Witnesses will use that term.
Right.
What was it like working full time for the religion at the world headquarters? What's it like at the world headquarters? I mean, did you see some of the leading guys from the religion, the top leaders of the whole thing? Did you ever bump into them? And
yeah. So, in the context of a believing Jehovah's Witness who thinks this is the end all be all, it was amazing, to be there. Putting myself back in that mindset. I was there from 19 to 21, and so it was kind of like, wow, I'm learning from these very experienced guys, and I'm meeting people from all over the world, and I even had opportunities to travel and stuff like that. So within that context, it's like going to the NBA almost. It's kind of along those lines, and that's kind of how you're looked at by a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. Like, it's a very of like all the Jehovah's Witnesses I know, is a very small percentage that go there, that kind of get there. There's people that have applied, they get rejected for whatever reason. And it's just kind of one of those things that very small percentage go to. But yes, now looking back at it, you can kind of see how things are just very, they say that everything is running through Holy Spirit and God and all of this stuff, but you kind of see there's favoritism, just like any corporation, right? There's favoritism. There's, just people making decisions on a whim, just based on their own feelings and, their interpretation of things. And, there's definitely a certain code. So like when you're at the headquarters, it's kind of being a Jehovah's Witness on steroids, because you're, certain haircuts that might be like allowed outside, or kind of like, we don't really allow that, or how you talk, and even how you dress, and different things like that. Like, it's very regimented. Everything is very regimented. So
like what you're wearing right now
strict.
wouldn't work. What you're wearing.
No. It started with the beard. I couldn't even be a Jehovah's Witness with the beard, but yeah, no.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, it's very strict, and they're like, I'm trying to think of examples, but it's been a few years since I was in that, because I left there, as many Jehovah's Witnesses do, and then I continue to be a Jehovah's Witness for years, and a very active, still like relatively high level Jehovah's Witnesses.
Why'd you leave there, if you don't mind me asking? Like,
it's no problem. So, man, okay, so basically what happened with that, I kind of go into more detail in other on other platforms, but so it's another thing with like guilt, right? So they constantly tell you about guilt and the need to confess things and things like that. So when I was there, I remembered that when I was a teenager, I had done something that would have probably been against their against their rules, right? And you're made to just feel bad about it. It's something that, like, it wouldn't matter for anybody else, but within that context, it's like, oh my God, these things, with whether it's anyway, usually many times it involves like maybe dealings with the opposite sex or things like that, right? So I said,
Right.
hey, I went and confessed. That's kind of what they drill into you. So when I was like, hey, when I was 17, one time I was hanging out with this girl and this happened and blah, blah, blah. So that was actually the first little trial I had, right? I had another one later that I described earlier. This was the first little trial that I had. And I had it while I was at Bethel because of just my own conscience that was tormenting me because you know of how they always kind of say, "Hey,
trust me,
Jehovah's watching," and
I get it.
yeah,
I had the same thing when it came down to pornography and you know, you name, bro, trust me, I get it. And for the audience who's listening, there is a shame. You don't even have to be a Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
You could be a basic Christian who takes the Bible somewhat serious and goes to a normal Baptist church. If you take this religion somewhat serious, and I don't think most people do take it as serious as what we're taking, which is why they last 20 and 30 years in the church. Whereas when you get serious about it, you're either going to be a top dog or you're going to collapse and realize something's not right. And I think that's what happens here with you. You're serious. You're confessing because you're really being honest. And it's almost like, bro, the guy who's asking you to confess to him, he probably done way worse and never had to say nothing about it. He took it to his grave because he saw what happened to people like you. I'm just saying, I'm not judging them. I don't know. I'm saying, but we don't have to dwell much on that. I guess what we can do is either another episode or they can go check out your YouTube channel to get into this. But I can see that start to, once again, push you outside and make you, oh, well, you can't be in this organization over here at this building anymore or whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And just to kind of like, I guess, like kind of put a bow on that. So remember I said how when you go through that trial period, you could either get kicked out like I did the second time, or you can get restrictions on you. So what happened is that first time they decided I was sorry enough and it had happened long ago enough to where they just put restrictions on it. But in that process, you can't be at this pinnacle anymore. You know, you can't be here at Bethel anymore, but you can, you know, you can kind of be a regular Jehovah's Witness, but you even out there, you have restrictions, you know, so there's kind of always that thing going on. So that's basically what happened. And that's why I ended up like leaving the headquarters.
Wow. I know someone who's a Jehovah's Witness watching right now will see why you're wrong. And like, you know what I mean? In their head, they'll go, yep. See, y'all are blind because you think that's silly. No, that's the truth. And that's how crazy this thing is. It's so amazing how they could do that. Okay. Well, we got you to speak on that. I want to talk about your pioneering, as they call it. You were out there, knock, knock. Hello, have you ever heard of Jehovah or whatever? You know, you're out here giving your spiel. You're like a salesman from door to door who's trying to sell salvation, if you will. I used to donate to them once in a while. I'd give them 50 cents to $1 for a magazine, you know, and had cartoons of little white and black kids petting lions, which is interesting because this gets into the race thing I wanted to ask real quick when we get to the door to door. I want you to tackle both of these. This wasn't on our list when I sent you the notes, but I want to ask because racial tensions are so big, especially with the media right now. It's like, whoo, it's a big deal. Yeah. It's a reality, though, in many places in the United States. It's a fact that this happens. Right. And a lot of these cults, like Scientology, like, well, I won't say them as much, even though they're predominantly white people. Mormonism, if you know the history of Joseph Smith, you'll be like, oh my gosh, from the Indians were darker skinned because of their sin. And like this goes into this, and this isn't me making this up, like the legitimate early sources talk about this. So is there racism built into the system of Jehovah's Witnesses? Or do they have such an ideological bubble that sees like past skin color, you know, like, because the cult can really get you thinking like that doesn't matter. And they're really beyond the it doesn't matter. But I wonder if at the higher ups, there's something like that. Is there a color issue in the cult that you think? Well,
let me answer it like this. So when you talk about like the John Smith with Mormonism, as I'm not even going to pretend to know very much about that. Right. But as far as the person who founded the religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of the earlier leaders, I guess, there's definitely some literature that's very embarrassing, to put it like lightly, about Black people and, you know, being a servant class and how Black people are going to turn white when paradise comes and stuff like that. Right. So that's older stuff. I will say this, and if somebody watching this who's a former Jehovah's Witness thinks differently, then that's cool. I would say I didn't see that there was like racism built into the fabric of the religion any more than just in society. You know, there may be some people who might say that because it is a multiracial, multilingual, very international type of religion or organization. Some people might say that it exists less than in regular society. And I guess it depends on where you are and what the situation is, you know.
It may have evolved, I suspect. It's probably evolved.
Yeah, I would say, just being honest, because I don't like to like exaggerate any of these things.
Right.
I would say it's, in my opinion, by and large, it's not any more than just regular society. It's there in a lot of places, but I think kind of on par with just regular society.
Yeah, it's never blatant and it's never a known thing. It's hidden, but
right.
there's kind of like, you can tell when they're mistreating people, or they just, like you talk about favorites. Well, I could see something like that playing a part. You know what I mean? He ain't my kind or something. And that's just from society itself. But
exactly.
You were pioneering door to door.
Yes.
Did you like doing that? Did you get a lot of people converted? And let me ask you this too, in light of that, you can answer those things, but you ever bump back into the people you used to talk to and say, yeah, I'm actually not a Jehovah's Witness anymore? And
yeah. So I'll answer the last part of your question first. So as far as bumping into people and saying I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, in my case, that wasn't necessary, because when I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness, that was like breaking news. Everybody, that was in my area and even other areas, like I said, because I was at what they call Bethel, I was at the headquarters, and I traveled to different countries. I was in 3 different languages. I'm actually trilingual, and I was in a Spanish congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was in a Portuguese congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, and of course English. So like people knew me. My family's very well known. So like there's pretty much nobody that knows me that doesn't know that I'm not a Jehovah's Witness anymore.
There's a reason you're on Leah Remini's show, right?
Definitely. So, but as far as like the pioneering you mentioned, so every Jehovah's Witness is expected to go door to door. That's like just to even be counted amongst the ranks of Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to be doing that, proselytizing in some way. But there's another group of, there's like a special subset or whatever of Jehovah's Witnesses that are known as pioneers, and they dedicate 70 hours a month to the, to the proselytizing work. And obviously it's uncompensated, it's on your own gas, your own time. I used to take Tuesdays off of work, so 20% of my income just gone, because I really felt like I had to do this thing. Like, the idea is if you have the circumstances for it, you should be doing as much as you can. So if you can learn another language, go learn another language. If you can move to another country, go, they kind of push that, especially on like the younger people. So as far as did I like it? I guess there was a time that, again, in the context of that, you feel like you're doing something good. I guess I won't say I liked it. Now I'm like really trying to think about it, honestly. I don't know if I ever liked it at any point. I guess like there were times where if I was like trying to convert somebody and it seemed like they were kind of going along with it, it was like, okay, well, this is kind of nice, but I don't know if that's really liking it in and of itself, right? Because most of the time it's like you're annoying people, you're you're disturbing people on their Saturdays or on their weekday evenings or whatever, and it's just kind of like, dude, bro, like leave me alone, like it's an annoyance to people, right? And you feel that, and especially like I said, over the years when I was having my questions, it's not like I was on fire, like, man, I know it was kind of like, well, this is just what I'm doing, and this is what I'm promoting, and I hope this is true. And so it's not quite as fun. Now, as far as like converting people, I actually did, study with people with the Jehovah's Witness publications and their translation of the Bible, and did get people to become baptized, AKA kind of signing the contract. I did get a couple of people to do that, young people, because when I was really doing that before I like kind of moved to other languages and stuff, it was with like teenagers and stuff, because I was like in my early 20s, or I was a teenager or whatever. So like, young guys or whatever. And I did have that. And I haven't I haven't really been able to talk with anybody because they're all, they're in now. So, and in those cases, their parents, in my particular case, their parents were also in. So it's not like I like kind of got them from the street and blah, blah. Like their parents were kind of in, and I was the one who kind of like, just kind of gave them the studies or whatever. And so, but no, I don't have communication with any of those people because I'm looked at as, like the evilest. Like
you're up there with Lloyd, right? You and Lloyd are like really horrible in their mind.
Yeah. Lloyd is a lot more popular as an ex-Jehovah's Witness than I am. He's very well known.
Right.
But especially like for my area and stuff like that. People you just think of the worst crime you can imagine. Just use your imagination, and I'm considered worse than that because I knew the truth. And I'm no longer in it, and I'm speaking against it. So it's kind of like, if anybody's getting destroyed when this thing goes down, you're number one on the list.
You went from Bethel to the lake of fire in a heartbeat to them. Like, So let me ask you this. And this isn't, this was not scripted here. This is an interesting question I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
When you went door to door, I had a lot of Mormons that would come to my, also Jehovah's Witnesses, but I never got into the literature with Jehovah's Witnesses because I myself wasn't at the place where I am now, where I developed a new understanding and researching and seeing the mythology and stuff in a whole different, we would sidetrack the conversation. I'm not trying to do that. But I entertain, I'm willing to even sit and say, all right, how about this? If you get to share with me your opinions, your thoughts, your beliefs, you have to allow me to do the same back with you when we're looking at the text, and we can go into it together. As long as you're allowing me, I'll allow you, and we can have that kind of dialogue. Well, I had Mormons do that. And these two young Mormon kids, man, they were on a mission. They started loving me. I was feeding them pizza and giving them Mountain Dew, and I don't think they're allowed to have caffeine. So I'm over here hooking them up with Mountain Dew, man. You know what I'm saying? But what were some of the coolest situations going door to door you had? And what was like one of the worst, if you can remember one, going door to door? If you can remember one. I know it's usually just a gray space in your head, probably.
Yeah.
Did you have any really cool people that, like you talked about, the guy that told you, man, did you know you guys had failed prophecies? Was that at a door to door situation? Because that's the only time you're really encountering people from the outside, right?
Yeah, it was basically a kind of a door-to-door situation, and it wasn't a good experience for me, at least not in that headspace. It was it threw me off and kind of threatened the whole fabric of everything I stand for, my family and everything. So that, looking back, I think it was helpful in getting me to where I am years later. I don't know if I can really pinpoint like, oh, this was like a cool. It's like I said, I did like, in the context of that, I did like the teaching aspect of it. Even though now I look at things and I say I was teaching them nonsense, or I don't know if I should even say that, but I was teaching them something that I don't think is ultimately beneficial in my opinion. But I did like kind of enjoy the process, I guess, of like teaching. I think just by my nature, take religion out of it or whatever, like by my nature, I think I like being able to like explain things and teach things to people. Like I've helped people even like learn Spanish and stuff like that, like separately. And it's just something that I kind of, it's something I enjoy. But anyway, and as far as bad experiences, there were a lot, especially as it got closer to the time when I was having more doubts. I would hate it when somebody, and this would happen often, somebody would ask a question or say something that was like, I like in my mind, I'm like, I agree with you, but I can't say that. I just give them kind of the stock answer, like, well, it's this and this and this, but I leave the door and I'm like, man, I don't even believe what I just said. I just said what I was supposed to say, So there were a lot of those experiences, sleepless nights, because, when you're not being authentic and you're doing something because you feel like you're kind of forced to, or you're under obligation, it's just not a good feeling, And I did that for a while, hoping that at some point, it would just get better and it would click, you know, and it just that never happened. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but there was a lot of like very legitimate objections that were brought up when I would be at the door. And
I guess let me ask it like this.
Go ahead.
Have you ever bumped into a guy? I'm sure most likely it's a man, just saying, because we guys like to get all intellectual, and I can tell that you're an intellectually satisfied, you're stimulated by intellectual thought. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we do leave things like this, because we are truly not only seeking, well, I'm not going to downgrade anyone else's seeking, but I like to compare and look and go, you ain't taking it as serious as I am, but also intellectually. I'm not saying other people aren't smart, but they're not, they don't find the interest theologically and going into complex mind games and digging and deeply looking into this stuff and seeing what a word means in the concordance and then finding out a source and stuff like into that. Have you ever bumped into a guy that you were like, oh shit, this guy knows some stuff. I went to the wrong door.
Yes, that's definitely happened. I will say that generally with Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're getting into something like that, you're basically like you try to leave as quickly as possible. if it looks like it's one of the, unless it seems like, okay, if I'm able to just present a few things to this guy, like he'll come around. But otherwise, I think you're taught to, you know, they kind of teach you this thing to where if somebody's bringing up what I would now consider good points or like legitimate arguments, well, they're arrogant and they want to follow Satan. And so you kind of just try to take your leave as quickly as possible, right? But yeah, I've definitely come across people that were like, you know, they knew things about different translations of the Bible. And we're pretty, like with Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, you could say that Jehovah's Witnesses know the Bible. I guess there's a lot of caveats you'd have to put there. You know, you have to say their translation, you have to say this and that, but they know a lot of scriptures in the Bible. But they're also very one-dimensional because they're only, it's not like they're able to explore a lot of different like encyclopedias and stuff like that. Now, the Watchtower writers, the Jehovah's Witness writers, they'll say, oh, the encyclopedia says this, and that'll be the extent of it, whatever it is that they feed you from these other sources. But you don't go, and so your knowledge is not very well-rounded. It's basically just filtered, and it's whatever, you know, it is they want to tell you. So yeah, there's definitely been situations where, you know, people were talking about stuff that was just way over my head. But again, as a believing Jehovah's Witness, for the most part, it's kind of like, yeah, they think they're smart. They don't know, you know, that's how Satan was. Satan thought he was smart and blah, 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 you know, and that's kind of the approach, you know, that you take.
Yeah, that makes me think of some of the things that must have been said to you that slipped through the cracks, that cleverly made you question. And, you know, that I hope anyone watching this finds out how to somehow help another guy who comes to their door. Don't just slam the door in their face. I mean, I personally, I'm not afraid to talk to anyone, whether, you know, for whatever. At the same time, I'd like, they're human, man. And so maybe you can plant a seed, show them some love, like make them feel comfortable, I guess. But we'll get there, because I want to ask you some advice toward the end. One thing I want people who are watching right now to know is there's a cost to doing business with this. You know what I'm saying, Fifth? And your music video is awesome. I mean,
thank you.
It is dope, bro. I mean, me and my wife watched it, and I started tearing up, man, because first of all, it's a lot of Jehovah's Witness lingo. There's a lot, like, as a Jehovah's Witness, you will know what this means. Like, I would listen to it and I'm like, yeah, this dude, it's like really changed you. You know what I'm saying? Making a stand against the very thing that was what kept you alive in your mind, the very thing that gave you the fabric of existence. And so tell us a little bit about the video, some of the lyrics in there, if you don't mind. And then you guys go check this video out. I'm telling you, you're going to like it, and subscribe to that channel, because he does music too. You guys, like, it's not just on this topic. Like, he's a human being now. He's not just a robot. So tell me about these, the cost of doing business. What goes into this?
Yeah, so it's several years. So I've been out of the religion for I guess 4.5 years now. It's crazy to think of how time flies, but so I've been out of it for 4.5, and I kind of always liked rap music. That's a whole nother issue because that wasn't really that was frowned upon within the religion. But there were some of us, depending on some of us came from the inner city or whatever for whatever reason, and we identified with that. So we would find ways to kind of like legally listen to that. So like, for example, maybe the radio edit of certain songs, or like songs that weren't explicitly about things that we knew we couldn't be supposed to be entertaining ourselves with, whatever. But I've kind of always had an affinity and always had a love and a passion for rap music. I always just appreciated the storytelling. And even though, I don't come from the environments that a lot of the guys that I looked up to would talk about, I was able to identify with just the human experience, right? Of just being able to kind of tell your story and talk about what you've been through and, overcoming things. So anyway, last year, I decided to who cares? I'm just going to do it. Like, there's a lot of reasons why people will say I shouldn't, blah, blah. Like, I'm free now. I can kind of talk about whatever, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. So anyway, I've been dealing with this issue, this thing, this is never going to stop, about like being cut off from my family. And we were very close-knit family. So when that's just cut off kind of cold turkey, it's kind of like you're confused and you're hurt, you go through all this trauma and stuff like that. So, I basically was just able to, I got to a point where even though I don't accept it in terms of, I don't think it's okay. And if you look at my activism channel, I talk very aggressively, primarily against this whole cutting off thing, because I think that, as humans, we're social creatures. Like, that's why people kill themselves. Like, no joke. Like, I've had friends who have tried to kill themselves, and I know people who have killed themselves after this process. And so I don't take it lightly. I don't say, well, it is what it is, blah, blah, blah. But it just got to a point where in order for me to like continue moving forward, because I didn't want to do that, I didn't want to take these other, I didn't want to do anything crazy. It got to a point where I had to kind of contextualize it somehow and say like, okay, this is the price I paid to live in my truth. Again, I don't accept it, but it's kind of the idea that kind of just helps me to say like, okay, I wasn't free before, I've lost everybody, but at least like I'm free. And I think there is some value in that. So that's kind of the idea behind Cost of Doing Business. It's like on my channel, it shows like there's a check. I'm literally writing a check, and it says the cost of doing business. And this is what I'm paying. I'm paying my family. I'm paying my friends, because, again, like I was disfellowship, but that's not, you can always go back. You can always, and I made the decision that like, I can't, right? So I paid the cost, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. So I say in the hook, I say, my family don't acknowledge my existence. I'm thinking, hey, that's the cost of doing business. I say these other things about, my family and friends that I've lost, and, having to talk with my parents and try to explain it to them. And the fact that it's kind of emotional blackmail, because, you can get your family back. Like, even to this day, I could get my family back if I'm willing to go and, hey, you know what? I was blinded by Satan. I believe it all. I'm going to do everything, and if I go back and do that, then I can get them back. So it's kind of like, that's where they, the Jehovah's Witnesses will justify and kind of rationalize.
Yeah. Just become a mental slave. Just become a mental slave into something that you acknowledge is not factual. You see the flaws. I get that they don't, and they think it's not flawed, and they have all their apologists. They have defenses for everything you would say, but you are on the side of truth. And it would be like, when you believe and know that what you're doing is right and true, how could you? I hope one day you're reunited, man. One of the favorite things I heard in that whole song, I mean, there's a lot I really loved about it. I ask and plead for all of you to watch and go subscribe to his channel, support him in what he does. His activism is trying to help save people's lives, literally. And I mean, this is what you are describing, and this is true. It's not just you, man. There's countless people talking about this. My heart, it goes out. But you had a saying, and you said, I'd rather, or there's answers you can't even question, but I'd rather have questions that I can't even answer. And that was one of my favorite things, being someone who has always wanted to know the truth and seek the truth and to know what the truth is. Well, when they give you what is the truth and you can't question the truth to see if it's true, once you really put the flame to the paper to see if it'll burn, when you really go to test something, you know, the scientific method, if you will, test it. And it talks about this testings and show yourself approved and all these things too. But well, we're just taking that to the bank. And when we do, we find issues with the system itself. We're realizing we're in the matrix. We know how to unplug now. We're sorry that you're plugged in. But I like how you said that. You said, I'd rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. And you flowed it so well, bro. Like,
I appreciate that. Yeah, it speaks to how I think so many others feel, like what you just articulated. You know, it's kind of like, I think the thing about the allure of some of these groups is, I forgot that you used the expression when you first started in your introduction. I'm gonna have to go back and look at it, but something about the gap. I forgot exactly what you said, but the idea is there's all these things that people don't know the answers to, right? And these religions or these cults, they give you the answers. So you know, you like, oh, why do we die? Well, I know the answer to why you die. You know, and you're good. Like you don't really need to keep questioning it, or you know, why is this happening? Why blah blah blah, right? So you have all of these answers, but if your normal human instinct is to continue to question it, right, and to continue to inquire, but you're not allowed to do that. It's like, we gave you the answer. That's it. Stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop.
Just it's your search is over, right? And if you have intellectual integrity, and maybe a few other things happen, like it did in my case, right? Combination of things, that's not enough. That's not enough. In fact, that's like that destroys your soul, right? Because by nature, you're inquisitive. You want to find out what's going on. So what's interesting is, you know, just whether it's this group or many others, what they'll say is, well, if you go out there, right, outside of these walls, so to speak, you're not going to have the answers anymore, right? And I'm saying, I actually prefer saying, I don't know the answers to these things than to have answers that I'm not able to continue. I want to continue to dig, right? That's why I call my album, the name of my album is 1 Year Old, right? And the idea, obviously, that's the idea is it's kind of like how a kid would say it, 1 year old, right? But the idea is I continue to have that. It has two meanings, right? Number one, it's like I'm starting out in the world and I'm new, right? So it's like I'm a baby. All of these things that everybody else learned when they were 16, I'm trying to figure it out in my late 20s and my early 30s, right?
Wow.
But the other aspect of it is I'm embracing the childlike quality of just being inquisitive and asking questions and not having that pride or that ego to where it's like, well, I know the answer, so you can't teach me anything, right? Like, I think that's where we were. When I would have a conversation with somebody that wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, it was all about, I'm just waiting for them to say something that kind of gives me the in so I can teach them the truth, because I know the truth and they don't. So it really doesn't matter what they have to say or what their experience is. I'm the one who can teach them something, right? So when you have that 1 year old mentality in my mind, right, it's kind of like, it doesn't mean you believe everything everybody tells you, but you're open to other experiences and you're using all of this to grow, right, and to evolve. And that's kind of that's the message that I'm pushing, right? Like, just, you don't have all the answers. Nobody does. Just be humble and take it in. And be willing to, you just may really learn something valuable from the person that's sitting across from you, instead of just trying to like tell them, all of the answers to everything that you already have,
Wow. that's my philosophy in many ways. That's how I live. And my philosophy is to continue to expand my consciousness and my intellect and keep learning. But yeah, we had the answer. That's one of the things I always tell people. When I thought I knew, now I know. Those are red flags for me because I'm a recovering drug addict. And when I think I'm on top of this mountain and I have the answers, watch out. Timbuktu, I'm about to drop. I'm about to Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. And I now remain very, I have answers that I have conclusions I think that I have met, but there are things that I question. And if I think one thing's right, the amazing part about my mentality now is, even if I think something may be more plausible or possible, like we talk about the historicity of Jesus on the channel here. Did he even exist? Like, this is a legitimate question among some scholars, and other scholars say, yeah, absolutely. Like the consensus says he did. I really entertain whether or not he's a complete fiction. And I say to my mind, man, it does make sense that there was a guy, but he was mythologized. And then I hear these other guys, and it's like, hold on, dude. What was he, if he did exist, and what evidence do we have to know that we could trust that that's really about him and not some other character, or they didn't fictionalize that? So there's so much that I ask, and I don't try to put too much concrete in there. Let me ask you. We're gonna shift out of the show here, and I want to ask you two things. First question that I think is important is this: how many people, and you don't even have to give an exact number, but I can only imagine. You probably have a lot of people who've written you, reached out to you and said, I was where you were. Thank you. Your message got through to me. Have you ever had anyone write you specifically and say, as an active Jehovah's Witness, I heard you on your YouTube, on a radio, on Leah Remini. I heard you and you impacted my life, and I am no longer a Jehovah's Witness thanks to you. Yeah, I might have lost my family. Yeah, I might have lost these things that we thought were the all, but your message helped me leave.
I've gotten a lot of messages like that, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. More than I can even count, you know. Wow. And it's crazy because up, I always just wanted to be at the pinnacle of the organization, right? Like, I wanted to continue to push this message and blah, blah. So like the idea now that people are like, hey man, you kind of saved my life, because even whether it was the activism or especially that first music video, I've received, and the Leah Remini special, which is on Netflix now. So now there's like a new wave of people that are seeing it for the first time and reaching out to me. I'm easy to find with you, right? Exactly. Case in point. And yeah, man, I don't take it for granted. I appreciate being able to be in this position, all of the stuff that has kind of like led me to this point where people are able to like kind of look at my story and see whether it's a blueprint or just like, hey, it's possible to leave this and still kind of be okay, even if it's just kind of at that bare minimum. I appreciate being that, for some people. But yeah, I've definitely gotten messages that just kind of stopped me in my tracks. And, I was about to commit suicide, and then I saw this and I didn't do it, like things like that, or people that have left. I've even had, and this is something that I never expected, but I've had people that I knew, even people that I was at the headquarters with, that saw my videos and then left the religion. There's people like that. It's been, like I said, it's been about 4 years since I've been doing the activism and doing the videos and everything. So I've kind of gotten it all. And I want to say, if anybody who has written me or who has been helped by some of the stuff that I put out, and you've reached out, I want to say that I've read it all. I try to respond to as much as I can. I'm sure there's some that I haven't, but I definitely try to read it all, and it definitely impacts me. Just being real, like it definitely impacts me because honestly, there's people whose videos I watched that helped me out. When I was kind of coming to that, so I understand the impact that it can have. So I definitely want to express my appreciation and gratitude for that.
Oh man,
that it's not something I take for granted,
bro.
I feel you, bro. I get the same way with some of this stuff that I get, man.
Yeah, man.
I would get you, bro.
Yeah, you got me, bro. You got me. That means the world to me too, to hear that, bro. Your voice impacts me, and I'm not even a cult member or never was influenced by them, but yeah, man, you're saving lives, bro. And I know exactly what that's like. I'm an emotional mess all the time because I feel it. I feel what I do. And if I ain't feeling it, then I'm not in it. And what you're doing, man, like you've done it for a long time. And we go through seasons where I might not shed a tear and hear you tell me how much it impacts you. And then a day comes where I realize, like, right now I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it. But look, let's end on this. Someone needs advice. They're in the cult. They're on the fence. They got doubting Thomas in their head. You know, I need to see to believe. Like at this point, I need evidence. I don't have that faith I did. I need to see. And we know what that's like. We were all doubting Thomases. I even say to this day, you know, if Thomas, you know, if Jesus were to appear to me for real, like, and said, here I am. And I'd know, like, it wasn't me hallucinating. This is legit. I'd become a Christian. Like, I mean, I would say this is good reason for me. Like, you did it. Okay, you did it. But I have all the reasons in the world to think this is fiction, that this is a story. And even that story itself is written for people who are in the movement to keep them from moving out of the movement. Because he says, but blessed are those who don't see. Yet still, you want to be blessed, don't you? You don't see, I know. Believe anyways. I mean, so my point is advice to someone like yourself or in there that's actually hearing you right now. What would you say to them?
Man. Man. You owe it to yourself to figure out if this is what you're supposed to be doing or not. You know, whatever path that you have taken, you were born into it, you got persuaded to believe it or whatever. There's never anything wrong with information. Never. So if you know, sometimes people will write me and they're on the fence and they're like, you know, what should I look at to try to, you know, I don't know, up from down, I'm confused. I've watched some of your videos. And I will generally tell them, go ahead and read their stuff too, right? I want you to read everything, look at everything, right? Take everything in, because I don't want to be just like them and be like, don't look at over there, only look over here, right? That's what they do. And that's the beauty of being on this side. I have no fear of anything you look at. You can look at whatever you want, right? Just be honest with yourself and come to your own conclusion, right? Like, I wouldn't even tell anybody you need to do this, you need to do that, except just research. You owe it to yourself. You would do it for anything. Nowadays, when we're going to go buy a freaking toothbrush, we research what's the best toothbrush.
That's a good
point. What do critics of this toothbrush say? Or a car. Maybe that's a little bit more reasonable of example, right?
Right.
You want to buy a Prius or whatever, whatever car you want to buy. You don't just go on the website of that brand and look at what makers of that brand and promoters of that brand or that make say. You look at everything, right? And it could be that you hear some criticism and you say, yeah, I hear the criticism. I've looked at criticism, but I'm still going to continue with that, right? Don't be scared of that process. It might be the same process, right? Like, just do the research. You owe it to yourself. If you have all these nagging questions and whatever, it's just no way to live. Like, as far as we know, it's one life. I don't know what you people believe beyond that. That's fine, whatever you believe. But like, at least this life is too short to waste on something that you're not, something that you're not sure about, right? Especially if it's something like that, right? It's now I will say this, just being very candid. My situation, without having my family, my brother was my best friend my entire life. Haven't spoken to him. I have not spoken to him. I talked about on the Leah Remedy episode. I talked about how I literally popped up at this dude's wedding. a few months after I left, and I was treated terribly, and basically kicked out. And my dad was, it was terrible. It was terrible. And so I'm definitely not saying like, just do it and it's easy and it's cool. Like I still battle with the fact that I don't speak to anybody who knew me before I was 28 years old. Like there's basically no evidence that I existed before 28 because everybody is involved in that, right? Like I said, I've had a couple of people come out, but by and large, like you have to also like consider that, right? It's not like an easy decision, especially if you're wrapped up in one of these groups like this and you come to the conclusion that you have to make an exit. You have to take all that into consideration. But what I will say is it is worth it. It is worth it. And that's why I say my song or anything else, anything you ever hear me, I will not, I'm choosing not to be enslaved in that way, even though it comes with some terrible consequences that I don't think should exist. And I'm going to continue to fight against those consequences because I don't think that anybody should have to choose between what they literally believe and their family. I don't think that makes any sense, right? And I'm going to speak against that. But I will also say that being mentally free to be able to let my mind go where it takes me and to feel like I'm at least closer to who I am in my core is worth it. It's worth it. And I feel like you are going to find, whoever you are that's watching this, you're going to find out the same thing.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Fifth, go check out the links down below. Check out his YouTube channels. Go watch his videos. He's interviewed people himself. He's done a lot of soul searching, if you will. And you guys can help support what he's doing. I hope you do. I really do. And I hope you who are watching take what he said and really run with that, because we had questions and we wanted to try and find answers. And sometimes you never know what the real answer to that question may be, but it's okay. If a place tells you you're not to question and to truly try and investigate, you might be in a cult, and not a good one, not a good place to be. You might be a slave to this ideology, and we both were freed from this. So I really do appreciate you coming on and showing this and letting us know this information. I know you're out of step with the activism on this stuff as you used to be, but you never know, man. We're humans. We're seasonal humans, man. So there's going to come another time, bro. I think you're going to be running out on the streets saying, that's it. We're fighting this thing. I'm done. You know what I mean? This is, we got to knock the tower down,
right.
That Watchtower, if you know what I mean. But the people, we love the people. That's why we're doing it. So
absolutely.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. And hopefully we can do this again.
For sure, man. I really appreciate you having me on, man. Love what you're doing and definitely keep it up. And, I wish the best to anybody who's watching this right now, just live your truth, man. That's my only message.
Thanks, brother. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, we are MythVision.